So in the previous class, we studied regarding the external feature. We saw that we saw the features in the anterior surface. Then we studied the feature in the posterior surface. Now we'll see the internal feature of the medulla oblongata. So internal feature, uh, the arrangement of the gray and white matter in the lower part of the medulla is same as that of the spinal cord. Is it clear? So you can see here. So this structure earlier we studied the spinal cord, where we saw that it has a central gray matter and peripheral white matter. Central gray matter has anterior gray column, posterior gray column, and the lateral gray column at some region, and there is a gray commissure. Then in white matter we saw anterior white column or anterior funiculus, lateral funiculus, and posterior funiculus. The similar structure we can find in the lower part of the medulla oblongata. However, in the upper part of medulla oblongata, it is different. In the upper part of medulla oblongata, a gradual modification occurs due to the presence of the fourth ventricle. Behind, there is fourth ventricle. There is no central canal in the upper part of medulla. Instead, the central canal open into the cavity of fourth ventricle. So this is the difference which we find in the lower part of medulla and the upper part of the medulla. We'll see them. Now, for the study purpose, the medulla, the internal feature of the medulla is studied at 3 different levels. If you take section at 3 different levels, the arrangement of structure will be different at these 3 levels. Okay, so the area which is popping up. So in these 3 levels, the arrangement of structure within the medulla oblongata is different. So where are these 3 levels? First one, at the level of the pyramidal decussation. Anterior surface, we saw that there is a central anterior median fissure. In the lower part of medulla, the anteromedian fissure becomes faint because of the decussating fibers of the pyramidal tract, which is known as the pyramidal decussation. So if you take a section here, so that will be the first area where we will be studying later. Then the second level, little above, which is at the level of the sensory decussation. The fibers from the cuneate nucleus and gracilis nucleus, which carry the sensory fiber, their efferents, they decussate, they cross each other. Later we will be studying regarding that at this level. If you take the section at this level, the arrangement of structure will be different than that of the lower level. The third level, which is the section is taken at the level of olive. We studied that the central elevation is pyramid. On either side, on the lateral side to the pyramid, there is a elevation, there is a oval elevation known as the olive. If you take a section at the center of olive, then that will be the third area where we will be studying the internal feature. So these are the 3 areas at which the section is taken to study internal feature of the medulla oblongata. So some books explain one more section above this level. Okay, so if you remember these 3 levels, it is enough. Okay, so that much is related to the 3 sections. Now we'll see the individual area. All the 3 sections we'll be studying now. First one, section at the level of the pyramidal decussation, that is this level. Okay, so if you take a section, if you cut the medulla oblongata transversely at the pyramidal decussation, it appears like this. The section appears like this. Clear? So it shows a transitional zone between the medulla oblongata and spinal cord. So spinal cord, it appears like spinal cord is gradually getting converted into medulla oblongata. You can find a few features of the medulla proper, whereas few features of the spinal cord. It is gradually transforming. You can see if you take a section at upper level, it is slightly different from this level. Clear? So the central gray matter here, which was butterfly shape, now it is separated from the rest of the. It forms a transitional zone between the medulla and spinal cord. However, similar structures that of the upper medulla. Have similar structure that of the upper medulla. The central canal is surrounded by central gray matter. You can see here, so this is the central gray matter, which is similar to that of the spinal cord. This gray matter surrounds the central canal. Central canal is centrally placed here, surrounded by the gray matter. In front of the gray matter, there is ventral, you can see here, the central gray matter. So these are the ventral horn of the gray matter. These two ventral horn of the gray matter, they are separated from each other by decussating fibers of the pyramidal tract. Clear? The pyramidal tract, actually it is located here. Few fibers of the pyramidal tract, they cross, not all, few of them, they pass backwards and medially, cross the midline, reach the opposite lateral funiculus, and from there they run downward to form the lateral corticospinal tract. They form the lateral corticospinal tract. Is it clear? Now this, from right side it is moving to the left, from the left side it is moving to the right. So there is a crossing over between the pyramidal fibers. Now this crossing over is known as the pyramidal decussation or motor decussation. So now these fibers which are crossing, they separate anterior gray column of right side with that of the left side. The neuron in the gray column give origin to upper rootlets of the cervical and spinal accessory nerve. You can see here, so this is the gray column, anterior gray column. It has two nucleus. Clear? It has two nucleus. I will mark them. You can see here, there are two nucleus. This one, it is the spinal nucleus of the first cervical. Clear? It is the nucleus of the first cervical nerve. Whereas here you can see, so this is the nucleus of the accessory nerve, spinal nucleus of the accessory nerve. So these are the two nucleus which are present where? In the anterior gray column. So anterior gray column has two nucleus, spinal nucleus of the accessory nerve and uppermost rootlet or first cervical spinal nerve. Clear? So once again I'll repeat, the central gray column surrounded by, central canal is surrounded by the central gray column. Anterior gray horn are separated from each other by the decussating pyramidal tract, pyramidal fiber. Ventral gray column has the two nucleus, or they give origin to spinal nucleus, accessory nerve and first cervical spinal nerve. The area between ventral gray column and spinal nucleus of the trigeminal nerve occupied by nerve cells of reticular formation. You can see here, this is anterior gray column we saw, and posteriorly there is a nucleus. This nucleus is known as the spinal nucleus of the trigeminal nerve. So this nucleus is known as the spinal nucleus of the trigeminal nerve. On either side it is. Now between anterior gray column and spinal nucleus of trigeminal nerve, there is a pink area which is known as reticular formation. Clear? So the area between the spinal nucleus of trigeminal nerve and anterior gray horn is occupied by reticular formation in the lateral region. The posterior region is occupied by the two fasciculi. They are fasciculus gracilis medially and fasciculus cuneatus laterally. The same similar structure we saw in the spinal cord. Okay, so the fasciculus gracili and fasciculus cuneatus. Now these two are related to nucleus gracili and nucleus cuneatus. They are related to nucleus gracili and nucleus cuneatus of gray matter. So gray matter is communicated, or nucleus gracili and nucleus cuneatus are connected to the central gray matter. Most laterally, here we find one more nucleus, that regarding that I had already mentioned, that is the spinal nucleus of the trigeminal nerve. Okay, so there is spinal nucleus of the trigeminal nerve. So in the posterior region there are, and related to the spinal nucleus of trigeminal nerve, there is a tract known as the spinal tract of the trigeminal nerve. Spinal tract of the trigeminal nerve. Clear? So in the posterior region we find 3 tract and 3 nucleus. The 3 tracts are fasciculus gracilis, fasciculus cuneatus, and spinal tract of the trigeminal nerve from medial to lateral. From medial to lateral there are 3 tracts and there are 3 nucleus. They are nucleus gracilis, nucleus cuneatus, and spinal nucleus of the trigeminal nerve. They are related to earlier mentioned 3 tracts. Clear? Now when traced downward, okay, so in the spinal cord we saw that the posterior horn is capped by substantia gelatinosa. The same substantia gelatinosa continues with the spinal nucleus of the trigeminal nerve. It is the continuation of the spinal nucleus of the trigeminal nerve. Now above, the spinal nucleus of trigeminal nerve extends up to the pons, upper part of the pons. Clear? So that much is related to posterior region. Now we'll see few descending fibers at this level. The descending fibers at the lower part of medulla, at the pyramidal decussation, are following. Their first one is corticospinal tract. So corticospinal tract. Many of them run backwards medially. So earlier I explained, many of them run backwards and medially cross the midline, reach the lateral region of the white matter, where they form a descending tract known as the lateral corticospinal tract. And this process of crossing over of fibers from right to the left constitute what is known as pyramidal decussation, which produce a surface elevation in the lower part of medulla. Clear? Pyramidal decussation. Clear? Once again I'll repeat. The fibers from the pyramid. So anteriorly we saw, in the median plane there is a pyramid. Fibers from pyramid run backward, or fibers of the corticospinal tract run backwards and medially cross the midline, reach the lateral region, where they form lateral corticospinal tract, which run downward into the spinal cord. Clear? And these fibers which cross each other, right and left side fiber cross each other, which the crossing over is known as pyramidal decussation. Clear? Now few of them, they doesn't cross the median plane. Few of them doesn't cross the median plane. They remain there itself. They run in the anterior itself. They remain here itself. Few of the fiber, they do not decussate. They remain here itself. And these undecussated fiber constitute the tract known as the anterior corticospinal tract. They constitute anterior corticospinal tract. So there are 2 corticospinal tracts from medulla oblongata onwards. Up to the medulla oblongata, there is only 1 corticospinal tract which lie in the ventral part of the brainstem. Medulla oblongata, most of the fiber cross and run backward to form the lateral corticospinal tract, whereas few remain, about 40% fiber remain in the anterior white column and constitute what is known as the anterior corticospinal tract. Now few other tracts at this level, are like the rubrospinal tract. Rubrospinal tract, you can see here. So this is the rubrospinal tract, which connect red nucleus to the spinal cord. Then vestibulospinal tract, this one, vestibulospinal tract, olivospinal tract, and tectospinal tract. The tectospinal tract is included in the medial longitudinal fasciculus. Okay, so it included in the medial longitudinal fasciculus. These are the few other descending tract other than corticospinal. You can see this is corticospinal, decussating fibers of the corticospinal, and remaining rubrospinal, vestibulospinal, olivospinal, and tectospinal. They are the other descending tract. Now there are few ascending tracts at this level. They are fasciculus gracilis that we studied earlier. So here it is fasciculus gracilis. Then comes fasciculus cuneatus. Then here we have spinal tract of the trigeminal nerve, spinal tract of the trigeminal nerve, which is related to the spinal nucleus of the trigeminal nerve. Then there are other tracts like the spinothalamic, anterior spinothalamic and posterior spinothalamic. There are two spinothalamic, anterior and posterior, lateral spinothalamic, anterior and lateral spinothalamic tract. Then anterior and posterior spinocerebellar or ventral and dorsal spinocerebellar tract. Then we have spinotectal tract here, spinotectal tract and spino-olivary tract. So these are the tracts which are found in the medulla oblongata at its lower part at the level of the pyramidal decussation. Is it clear? So let us have the section at the level of the sensory decussation. Okay, so the second level, earlier we saw the first level we saw till now, the section at this level, section at this level we saw. Now we'll see the section at a upper level here. Okay, section at the level of the sensory decussation. It lies little above the pyramidal decussation that we saw in the earlier image. This section lies at a little higher level than that of the pyramidal decussation. Here the central canal is surrounded by the central gray matter. So earlier we saw the gray matter was like that of the spinal cord, whereas here the spinal cord, the gray matter is divided into multiple sections. They are separated from each other. Okay, so there is a central gray matter and all the other nucleus got separated from the central gray matter. So earlier the nucleus gracilis, nucleus cuneatus, nucleus of trigeminal nerve nucleus, they were attached to the central gray matter. Now these all get separated and the ventral gray column will get disappear. There is no ventral gray column. Okay, only central gray column will ventral gray horn is get disappeared and only central gray column we have central gray matter, and the posterior gray column gets separated from the central gray column or central gray matter and they dispersed into three separate nuclei. Is it clear? So the central canal is still persistent here. It is still remain. It is present in the center, and central canal is surrounded by the central gray matter. And very importantly, the nucleus gracilis, nucleus cuneatus, spinal nucleus of the trigeminal nerve, and pyramids occupy the same position at that of the lower level. Okay, so in the lower level we saw that pyramid lie anteriorly on either side of the median plane, and there is a similar structure will be seen here also. The pyramid lie on either side of the median plane. Nucleus gracilis, nucleus cuneatus, and spinal tract of trigeminal nerve lies in the posterior region. Similar structure will be seen here. The nucleus gracilis, nucleus cuneatus, and spinal tract, nucleus of the spinal tract of trigeminal nerve lies posteriorly. There is no change. Clear? But very importantly, in the lower level, these three were connected to the central gray column, whereas at this level, they are not connected. They are separated. Okay, nucleus gracile, cuneatus and trigeminal nucleus do not continue with that of the central gray matter. So this is the difference between upper level and lower level here. Then the fibers arising from, this is very important, notice, the fibers arising from the nucleus gracile and nucleus cuneatus. Okay, so from where these nucleus receive fiber? From the fasciculus gracile. Fibers of the fasciculus gracile end at the nucleus gracilis. Fibers of the fasciculus cuneatus end at the nucleus. Nucleus cuneatus or cuneate nucleus. Clear? Now, fibers from gracile nucleus and cuneate nucleus pass forward, and these fibers known as the internal arcuate fibers. These fibers are known as the internal arcuate fibers. They form an arch internally. Physically, they form an arch like this, curved course, and they run forward, cross the midline in front of the central gray matter. They cross the midline in front of the central gray matter, and they make a ascending tract in front of the central gray matter on either side of the median plane. So this is median plane here now. On either side of the median plane, these fibers reach there, cross the median plane and form a tract here. Now this tract is known as the medial lemniscus. It is known as the medial lemniscus. Okay, so it forms a ascending tract known as the median lemniscus, and we saw these fibers of the internal arcuate tract or internal arcuate fiber cross in the median plane. Now this crossing of the internal arcuate fibers are known as sensory decussation. It is known as the sensory decussation. Clear? So there are two decussation you saw in the medulla oblongata: pyramidal decussation or motor decussation and sensory decussation. Motor decussation is the decussation of the pyramidal tract. Sensory decussation is the decussation of the internal arcuate fibers. The fibers are arranged in such a way that the fibers from fasciculus gracile, they reach the anterior region of the medial lemniscus here, whereas the fibers from the nucleus cuneatus, they reach the posterior part of the medial lemniscus. Okay, so this is how the fibers are arranged after crossing over. Clear? So that much is related to sensory decussation, which is a characteristic feature of the medulla oblongata at the level of the sensory decussation in the middle, in the upper closed part. Now, the accessory cuneate nucleus placed posterolateral to the cuneate nucleus. So, the posterolateral to the cuneate nucleus, there is one small nucleus known as the accessory cuneate nucleus. The fibers arising from the accessory cuneate nucleus form the external arcuate fibers. It forms the posterior external arcuate fiber. So they arise from here, come out, and they enter into the inferior cerebellar peduncle and reach the cerebellum of the same side. Clear? Accessory cuneate nucleus, the accessory cuneate nucleus receive proprioceptive impulses from the upper limb. That is, impulses regarding the joint and muscle position. Is it clear? So that much is related to accessory. Once again, the repeat. Posterolateral to the cuneate nucleus, there is a small nucleus known as the accessory cuneate nucleus, which receive proprioceptive sensation from the upper limb. The fibers arising from here, accessory cuneate nucleus, forms the posterior external arcuate fiber, which enter into the inferior cerebellar peduncle. Through that peduncle, it reach the cerebellum of same side. Now, a number of cranial nerve nuclei can be identified here. In this level, we can find many nucleus of the different cranial nerve. First one, nucleus of the hypoglossal nerve. In the central gray column, anteriorly, on either side of median plane, you can see these large nuclei. They are the nucleus of the hypoglossal nerve or hypoglossal nucleus. So, where it is located? In the central gray column, ventral to the central canal, on either side of median plane. Posterolateral to the hypoglossal nucleus, there is a small nucleus, which is the dorsal nucleus of the vagus nerve. So, it is the dorsal nucleus of the vagus nerve. Clear? Then, behind the central canal, there is a nucleus known as the nucleus of the tractus solitarius. Nucleus of the tractus solitarius. Clear? So, where it lies? It lies behind the central canal on either side of the midline. Clear? Vagus nerve, dorsal nucleus of vagus nerve. From this, vagus nerve arises. From the nucleus of the tractus solitarius, the few fibers of the glossopharyngeal nerve and few fibers of the vagus arises from the tractus solitarius. Most of the fibers concerned with the taste sensation, they end up in the nucleus of the tractus solitarius. Clear? Now, there is one more nucleus ambiguous. Okay, so nucleus ambiguous, there is a mistake of O, there is single O, I'll correct it. So, the fourth one is the nucleus ambiguous. The nucleus ambiguous lies lateral to the reticular formation. So, earlier we saw there is a reticular formation in the lateral funiculus. You can see here in this image. So, this is the reticular formation. Lateral to the reticular formation, there is a nucleus known as the nucleus ambiguous. Clear? Now, this nucleus ambiguous wait for a minute. So, nucleus ambiguous. The efferent from the nucleus ambiguous reaches the glossopharyngeal nerve, vagus nerve, and spinal accessory nerve. Okay, so that much is related to the sum of the nucleus here. Clear? So, hypoglossal, you can see hypoglossal, vagus, nucleus of the tractus solitarius, then nucleus ambiguous. Clear? Now, you may find a few more nucleus here other than these cranial nerve nucleus. They are like olivary nucleus, inferior, you can see here. So, inferior olivary nucleus, it is purse shaped nucleus. Okay, so which lowermost part of the olivary nucleus is found in the upper part, which forms the olive actually. So, lowermost part of the olivary nucleus can be seen here. Then, lateral to it, there lies the posterolateral to it, there lies the accessory olivary nucleus. Then, on the side of the reticular formation, we can find lateral reticular nucleus, and in front of the pyramid, you can find the arcuate nuclei on either side of the median plane, arcuate nucleus. So, these are the other nucleus which can be found at this level. So, they are accessory olivary, inferior olivary, then lateral reticular and arcuate nuclei. Now we'll see, so that much is related to gray matter. We'll see some tracts now, white matter, which are present in the white matter. There are few ascending tract at this level. Ascending tract. The ascending tract are, you can see, behind the gracile nucleus there is fasciculus gracile. Behind the cuneate nucleus we can find the fasciculus cuneatus. Okay, fasciculus cuneatus. So fasciculus gracile and fasciculus cuneatus. Then we can find spinothalamic. You can see, so ventral and lateral spinothalamic tract, these two. Then spinocerebellar ventral and dorsal spinocerebellar tract. Then you can find spinotectal. Here there will be spinotectal tract. Then spino-olivary tract. This is the spino-olivary tract. So these are the tracts which are ascending, present in the second section at the level of the sensory decussation. Then there are few descending tracts, like the first one we know, pyramidal tract. There is only one pyramidal tract. Lateral is not there because lateral will be appeared in the lower part of medulla. In the upper part of medulla there is only one tract, that is simply known as the pyramidal tract or corticospinal tract. There is rubrospinal tract here. Rubrospinal tract which connect red nucleus to the spinal cord. Then vestibulospinal tract, vestibular nucleus to the spinal cord. Then inferior olivary nucleus from the inferior olivospinal tract from inferior olivary nucleus to the spinal cord. And there is one more important one, medial longitudinal fasciculus. Medial longitudinal fasciculus which contain the tectospinal tract. You can see here. So this one, medial longitudinal fasciculus. On this also, on this side also it is there, medial longitudinal fasciculus. The medial longitudinal fasciculus increases in size as we move upward. Okay, so here you can see it is only a small area. As we move upward towards the pons, this area will increase in size. So these are the descending tract which are found at this level. Clear? So once again I'll repeat. The ascending tract are fasciculus gracile, fasciculus cuneatus, then spinal tract of trigeminal. Then we have spinothalamic anterior and lateral, spinocerebellar anterior and posterior, then spino-olivary, spinotectal. Descending tracts are rubrospinal, vestibulospinal, olivospinal, tectospinal. So these are the tracts which are present at this level. Clear? So with that I finished with the medulla oblongata at the 2 level. First we saw medulla oblongata at the level of the pyramidal decussation, so this level, and later we saw pyramidal tract, medulla oblongata at the sensory decussation. The third level, it is the section of the medulla oblongata at the olive or at the open part of the medulla oblongata. So that we will study in the next